Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. We're in the middle of season 3, which is super exciting, and I've had some familiar faces returning. I've been having some new faces making appearances, and for tonight's episode, I am really stoked to have someone on who I've known for technically a super duper long time. And we'll undoubtedly be talking about that here in a few minutes, but I would like to welcome the ever so wonderful Tom from Kaijutopia, uh, fan film creator, reviewer, Kaijutuber in general. Welcome, Tom. It's good to see you.
Hi, Donnie. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for welcoming me on to Growing Up with Godzilla.
We kind of did grow up together with Godzilla when you think about it.
In a way, yeah, yeah. We go way back, like you were saying. I mean, that sort of realization that in some way we've shared this space for longer than I'm sure some fans have
Been
been
alive.
alive.
Which is kind of horrifying to think of, right? Like I have moments where I will have conversations with younger fans and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, my parent is your age." And I'm like, "What?"
We're
But,
still stuck in that sort of state when we feel like we're still young, like we're still learning about how the world works, and slowly it's dawning on us, while simultaneously, oh no, we're getting up there. We're in our I'm in my mid 30s. We have our
same.
careers. We're going out in the world. Starting
And
our
you know
lives.
what? We've aged like fine wine though, I think. So, that
Oh,
at least is
absolutely.
that is working in our favor. So,
I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but now that you've said it, I just want to highlight the fact that it's true. That was really well said.
thank you. Thank you. No, Cliff Notes version for everyone. Tom and I have known each other since the old message board days when the internet was young. We first met each other on Rodan's Roost, which had a forum called Kaiju File, and we were both moderators on there. My username was Eternal Mothra. What was yours?
Mine was Tomzilla. Oh, that
Beautiful.
sounded
Isn't it
great. I mean,
fitting?
I know, Matt. Oh, Tomzilla, those were the days. Eternal Mothra, like what can we say? It's kind of like when you're going to like the bank or something, and they're like, okay, can I have your information? What's your email? And I'm like, oh, it's Tomzilla and it's
Right?
like that moment where you're like, oh, this was from a different era in my life.
Do you ever have anyone on the internet who still like refers to you as Tomzilla?
Every once in a while. Like I still have friends from the Rodan's Roost era. Like I have friends over at Toho Kingdom, and sometimes I might get a Tomzilla, but generally it's just Tom, which I think I've been called. I've been very upfront about, yeah, my name's Tom. This is who I am, and people generally just call me Tom. I guess just saying Tomzilla, everyone just knows. Perhaps we should like skip the formalities and just skip straight to, calling each other by who we really are, if you're comfortable with that.
Like those old times on Kaiju File were pretty wild. Like, and I was mentioning this in the back room, but when I found out, because you were a moderator on Kaiju File before I was, if memory serves me correctly. And then eventually, I don't know what, did we have like an application process or something? On those old forums, we tried to like make things sophisticated when they really didn't need to be. So I like went through the process and I found out that I became a moderator on Kaiju File. And I literally treated it like it was an entry on a resume. Like I was like, ooh, look at this, everybody. LinkedIn.com, here I come. It was so dramatic, but I miss those days very fondly. So
I mean, in essence, it is an important position. I mean, message boards may be a thing of the past, but nowadays there's Facebook Messenger pages, you have subreddits, And being a moderator for those, you still have to comb through a whole lot of spam, if you want to
Yes.
call it, or there's a lot of baggage that comes with it.
Well, and it is kind of like community development and maintaining when you think about it, right? I mean, look at us now, like years later, like we did that crucial role in that little space, and now we're like kind of creating and curating our own spaces here on YouTube in the same fandom, doing the things that we love, which I think is pretty cool. It's kind of a full circle moment-ish when you, at least when I think about it.
I couldn't agree more. It's kind of about it's kind of like paying it forward in a way. Like I was when I joined the Godzilla online community in it's very like back when it was just starting to be realized. I mean, we had no idea what where this was going to lead, but I benefited from it. I made really good friends. Like it kind of helped me mature in a way that I probably wouldn't have like if I like just tried to spend my time doing other things that perhaps weren't I may have gone I may have grown up to regret.
Now I totally get that. I feel the same exact way. So, well, obviously, we're here to kind of unpack your experience growing up with Godzilla, how you became a fan, how it's grown over time. So, how were you first introduced to Godzilla at the beginning? Share that story.
Oh man, this question. It's got to be a question that every Godzilla fan just loves to hear.
Mm-hmm. Although we don't often
um
talk about it, right? Like, I think
right? Because
one
we
thing I
all kind of know our
enjoy,
fans.
yeah, like, we don't really carve out a space to have that chat. So, like, now I'm hoping that we can kind of enjoy, like, that trajectory that we all took. So, what was your entry point in being a Godzilla fan?
I mean, it happened when I was very young. I mean, I can't remember how old. I mean, I hear different things. Sometimes I hear, oh, you had to be 2 or 3. It's definitely one of my earliest memories. And of course, memory itself, maybe not the best thing to rely on, but I remember just loving like dinosaurs. And then one day there was this movie. I didn't know it was a movie at the time, but it was the American version of The Return of Godzilla. So Godzilla 1985. It was playing on my TV, and I couldn't tell the difference between real and make believe quite yet. So to me, this was real. This was like something that was really happening. And I see this
Wow.
giant, like fire breathing dinosaur creature just marching down the streets, and I'm just in awe of what I'm seeing. And of course, later I would find out, my mom would explain to me just it's a movie, it's make believe, it's not real. And being, I'm a kid, I love dinosaurs, so I see a dinosaur and I'm told like, hey, dinosaurs really existed at one point in time. So there's that sort of like crossroad, that sort of distinction you suddenly have to make between something that was real, something based on something that was real, and something that's make believe but still, hey, it's based on things that are no longer here. But then I
Interesting.
remember after that, I loved it. I wanted more of it. So my mom would take me down to the local video store where this is where she had rented Godzilla 1985. And back then there was this, these movies were, they were played on these things called VCRs. And
What's
this is,
that? I'm kidding.
I know. And yeah, this is now a historian channel. We're gonna teach technologies from a bygone age.
Growing Up with Godzilla is officially a museum.
Good to know.
I love it.
Uh, we'll digitally like make our hair turn white in the end and all.
Hey, if you would have caught me on the internet back in like 2008, I would have done horrible photo manipulations with that. So,
How far we've come, right?
right, how far we've come.
Uh, yeah, so one thing led to another, and we kept going to this local video store, and I kept getting the same movie. I kept getting this Godzilla movie. It was the only one that I knew of that they had at the time, and we went back so many times that the owner of this video store actually made this VHS copy and just gave it to me. And
Oh,
it was like one of the greatest. It was not only one of the best gifts I still remember receiving, but it's one of those sort of memories, those core memories that kind of help you kind of realize just the true meaning of a gift. You don't want to like get, there's a difference between I receive presents, so many presents every, Christmas or every birthday, and you kind of lose track of, do you really care about this? Do you
mhm.
understand why it's pretty, it's nice that people care about you. And for me, it was definitely that latter example of like, here's someone who didn't have to do that, yet they realize this is something that you seem to enjoy quite a lot, and they want to contribute to that. And it's
Wow.
that's always stayed with me.
That's such an important memory. And I mean, also major props, like Godzilla 1985 being your first Godzilla film, like that's a heavy film too.
Oh, so many of its mature themes, how it like involves Cold War, nuclear metaphors. I mean, all of that went over my head. All I'm
Mhm.
there for is big monster, and
Were
um
you devastated when Godzilla fell into Mount Mahara? Because I
oh,
was.
I bawled, I cried. I mean, and I still do. Let's just
Oh,
face
me
it.
too. Every time I had that movie on, like my parents had to be like, "Oh God, here we go. He's gonna cry again," and I
I
would.
mean, it's pretty sad. I mean, it's kind of remarkable too. It's a really not. It kind of serves as a gateway for younger people, younger viewers or children to be able to empathize with something that's not, well, human.
Mhm.
Godzilla is, a giant. He could be a number of different things depending on the story. But here's this like creature that is from like a literal like living relic, something that
Mhm.
should not exist, but here it is.
Right.
And despite everything that he does, you could still put it together at a young age that this is not really quite his fault. He's reacting to his environment. He's reacting to a world that is, that fears him, and because it fears him, they just don't understand him. So they're trying to make life super miserable,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is something I feel like we can all relate to on some level.
Oh, absolutely. I almost think that that's timeless in a way, right? When you think about it. So that was an interesting takeaway from the film, like from a young perspective. Like, so I guess as a fan, like as you branched into your teenage years, like how did your, connection with being a Godzilla fan shift, if at all?
Oh man, I think the older I got, it's kind of like one of those crossroads between when I was younger, I was all in it just for the monster action, right? Monster v monster, discovering that there are more Godzilla movies, and suddenly he's a good guy in some of them. I think I went from Godzilla 1985 to Godzilla versus Monster Zero, and
Oh,
had no idea that these are two different continuities. Such a thing, again, would not have occurred to me at that point. But then, over the years, you kind of begin to start seeing these films for what they are, the sort of thematic messages they have. Like there's a I I really love reading about like behind the scenes, like how these movies were made now. I mean, I have several books where my favorite hobby nowadays is to just go through, highlight every little area that's so interesting to me, like learning about these people, like these real people who made something that would go on to like become like a bedrock for my childhood, like something
mhm.
that would shape my life in a way that I'm still trying to learn, wrapping my head around to this day, and just realizing like it's incredible. Like that this character that is so like so simple from, on a superficial level, is
Hmm.
so also at the same time extremely complex. There are so many different layers when
Yeah.
you realize you have one of the few characters in pop culture that can literally be whatever you want him to be. And
Yeah.
if you have a great story, you have a great director, like you can make a great film with Godzilla that can
Right.
just that can exceed your expectations, your wildest dreams.
Well, and I think what's kind of wild about Godzilla is the staying power, right? And I know I've had this conversation a few times with some other people recently, especially like Godzilla minus one and the level of success that that film has received. Like and having multiple incarnations of Godzilla happening at once, like after 70 years, like that is some major staying power. And I think that translates to us fans too. I mean, there are so many people who come and go from fandoms, they kind of like lose their connection to whatever they love. Yet here we are, right here, 25 years later, still Godzilla fans, still very passionate about this franchise, doing what we love to do. Like that staying power all around, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think that's just a testament to just what makes this character appealing to so many people. I mean, if you were to ask every Godzilla fan, what is it that you like about Godzilla, you're going to get a different answer almost every time. I mean, you're going to hear something that sounds familiar, but
Hmm.
Godzilla means so many things to so many different people. And when you just break it down and see that depending on how he's changed over the years, yet still at the same time still being, he still keeps that same core that's recognizable to fans from like of all ages, from all walks of life.
Hmm.
I think that just the staying power, just the fact that, there's a big chance Godzilla is still going to be here long after we're gone, which is kind
Which
of,
is wild to think. It's
it's
so
an
wild to
interesting
think.
thought experiment.
Well, and we've been through that decade where we literally thought Godzilla was not going to be revived at all. Like after Godzilla Final Wars, they were basically like, "We're done." Like
Mhm.
this is
Yep.
Godzilla's final rodeo. Like here we go. And now look, you know, that's been that's been 20 years ago. Um
Careful.
and
Need more
here we
coffee quickly.
and no, right? Here we are, honestly upgrade to wine at this point after thinking of that. But but that is some wild staying power when you think about it. So fast forward to recently, like or at least the last few years. So obviously we both have kind of like found our niche in the fandom, and yours has been via Kaijutopia, right? So I want you to talk about that. Where did you create this vision, or where did this vision come from for this YouTube channel that you've created with all the wonderful like fan film creation work that you've done? Like I want to know all about
Well, now that you mention it. Oh man. So this wasn't when I started Kaijutopia, I didn't really imagine that it would become a full-fledged stop motion sort of based channel. I mean, I think the first major project I made was back in 2014, where I took one of those air suits, those like those Godzilla suits that you can air up, and it was just I put up a green screen in my garage. My best friend, he put like on his ghost costume, monster costume, and we just fought each other, and I would then digitally like splice it in like throughout different parts of Seattle and such. Oh, hello, Logan. Pardon the interruption.
No,
My
that's fine. Do we have a guest? That was very wholesome. How old is Logan now?
Oh yeah, he's 4 years old. He's sometimes he knows that I will call him baby kaiju or my little monster because he's just we talked earlier about how like what it was like, first being introduced to Godzilla. And I mentioned something to the effect of like, memory, it may not be the most reliable thing, but here we go. But like
Mm.
now, being able to watch my son, you know, become exposed, seeing his first Godzilla movies, um, just seeing it, from a different angle, from a different perspective, it's really, well, I mean, we've already talked about coming full circle here, but like that's
Hmm.
kind of what it feels like. And he's also, I think he's a bigger Kong fan than Godzilla fan, which I love
Oh.
because my grandpa, he loved Kong, and he and I had a fierce rivalry. And of course, as a kid, I thought it was more serious, right? Like, oh yeah, well, Godzilla could beat up Kong, and then we watched the movie, and sorry, Godzilla fans, Kong won that first fight in their movie. I'm sorry that it's just,
That's literally what
but
happens. Yeah.
like so nowadays, my son and I can kind of have our own little friendly rivalry. His favorite movie, of course, is Godzilla versus Kong, and he loves the most recent one.
Hmm.
And he loves the new Empire as well. He just loves watching anything Kong, Godzilla related. So,
And you know what I find really wholesome about all this too is the fact that, I mean, kind of what you were just describing, we get to pass it on to the next generation, right? I don't have any kids, but like one of our best friends has a son who I got him into Godzilla, and now like he is like hyper obsessed with Godzilla. Like every time I see him, like at like interviewing me like with so many questions, and we get to actually sit down and like watch Godzilla stuff together. And it's such a really cool experience being able to watch like kind of a little version of ourselves. Like maybe it's making peace with our inner children that we were way back then, when we get to watch them just light up and enjoy, these characters on these films the way that we once did as well.
and I think that in itself makes the Godzilla fandom more, I'd say, inviting for new fans, especially
Hmm.
younger ones, because we remember what it was like when we were just getting started and exploring, and we like I just speaking from my own personal like experience, like I want to be able to make this community, this place, a safe space for starters for anyone who loves these characters, love these movies, but I also want it to be a place of true growth where you could feel comfortable, where you could feel like you can exercise your creativity.
Yeah.
And I do think that we're making a good positive impact. Like I remember when I was younger talking about Godzilla. It was like a great way to like immediately uh, raise a red flag. Like nobody will take you seriously now because, oh, you like
Hmm.
Godzilla movies. Nowadays it's become part of like it's become part of, I'd say, the colloquial pop
Hmm.
culture talk. Like I work in public education, so
Hmm.
couple months
Same.
ago, right on. A couple months ago, I'm in line. I work with anywhere from age groups like from kindergarten all the way up to sixth grade, depending on
Hmm.
the day. And I'm outside with this classroom, and I'm like, okay, I'll let you guys in, but if you can answer this question, who is my favorite giant monster? And I kind of feel like this should be obvious, right? And the first one I hear is Kong. The second answer I
Hmm.
hear is Mothra,
Oh,
which,
oh, oh,
right. And finally, a kid from the far back of the line goes Shimo.
oh.
And I'm like, what is
What?
happening? What is, are you, all right? You know what? All three of those are fine choices. I think I will adopt them all. That sounds perfect.
I mean, you are wearing a Mothra shirt today.
Yes, I wanted to represent, our divine goddess, she who shines a light, a ray of hope upon us all.
That I'm gonna bring a tear to
There
my eye
she
with
is.
that description. I have my little Mothra blanket because to
Oh
drape
my
over
god, that's
me
so cool.
because I'm a little chilly because of the air conditioning. Ooh.
That
Anyway,
is so cool. Oh, I love that.
I know it's my favorite G Fest purchase. So interestingly, kind of focusing on Kaijutopia a little bit. Has like has your son been interested in what you do with your channel by any chance, or is aware of it?
Oh yeah, he's popped up, I think, in a couple of my VFX breakdown videos. Every once in a while, I'll stream just here's me editing a current project, and almost right on cue, he'll just come in
Make
like
a
like a
cameo.
wrecking ball. um, a lot of some of my regulars, kind of like wonder when's Logan going to show up? Is he going to come in at any moment? Um, he is fascinated whenever I have my green screen studio set up and I have all these action figures that I use. I mean, you could all see them right here in the background. I
I
try
love
to
your display, by the way.
thank you, thank you. It's I kind of wonder if I go a bit overboard, but then I'm kind of like, okay,
Nonsense.
as long as I use them for at least one project, it makes it work. It's fine.
No, and it's really cool. Your channel has grown so much too. What you have, how many thousands of subscribers now? Like 20,000?
It just I couldn't believe it. And of
It's
course,
so awesome.
well, at the same time, it happens right around the time when I'm consumed with work and raising a kid, and so like I'm waiting for the summer to really begin to have the time to focus on different projects that I've wanted to do all year for years now that I just didn't have the time to do. But then
Hmm.
now it's like, oh, hello everybody, can you just wait a few months? Glad that you're here. But it's just so it, at a certain point, if you're like anyone who is interested in doing videos and joining the Godzilla YouTube or whatever the Kaijutube
The
space,
kaiju tube.
um, you know, just first and foremost, be honest with what your goals are. What is it that you
Mhm.
want to pursue? Because I wasn't doing this to get subscribers. I'm
Right.
not really doing this to like, oh, one day this is gonna become a full-time job, which would be ideal. That would be great. But to be realistic, you know, please don't quit your day job to make uh, monster video or Godzilla videos unless you have a plan, unless you're financially stable enough to do it.
Right. That's very salient advice, I would say. But it is
You
really
think
cool to see. It is really cool to see that level of support, though.
it is. I mean, it really means the world to know that so many people enjoy your work, your art. They support what you do.
Hmm.
And it also
Absolutely.
makes you more like, okay, maybe you're like halfway through the editing session and you're like, I could I could just turn this all in right now. I don't have to keep going like this. I could just, click render, upload, we're good to go. But then, you kind of realize, oh wait, that's not fair to the people who are taking their time, investing their time and attention into what you're doing. So
Hmm.
I try to make every single project the best that it can be. I try to, whenever I'm making a new video or a new stop motion project, I always try to push myself a little bit more, trying
Hmm.
to like, you know, I don't want it to be a breeze, a walk in the park. I really want to try and do something I have never done before, and hopefully something that my audience hasn't seen before as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, and because I've followed you for years, and I've watched your work grow in that time considerably,
Oh, thank
and
you.
it's been so cool to watch because, like, I feel like we see the evolution of that hard work taking place just right in front of us, right? So which if you were to pick a project that you've done so far that is your favorite, which one is your favorite, or that you're most proud of?
It's a good thing my son isn't here because it's like trying to choose your own, between your children.
That's true. That's fair.
Oh man, I think I would pick this project I made in. I think it came out in 2020 called Space Godzilla Prodigal Son. And for starters, this movie is based on this sort of uh, idea I've had for a long time because back in the day, I was a big Space Godzilla fanboy. I loved me Space
Woo!
Godzilla. And I started thinking about what would make for a cool new Space Godzilla origin story. And the premise is that somehow, at the time, when this idea was first conceived, I was thinking of, making Godzilla Jr. become Space Godzilla, as opposed to
Mm.
just being these G cells somehow made it into a black hole, which were exposed to such and such energy and came out of a white hole, and then somehow the most horrific space monster was born. I mean, sure, that's cool and all, but I kind of want something to be a bit more emotional, something that would actually make this, um, you know, it would raise the stakes so that the audience could empathize with, our main monster, Godzilla,
Mm.
and also just have to accept it, have to state it for what it is. I'm using toys, you know,
Hmm.
these are action figures. So to be able to get to a point where I'm trying to, you know, ask the audience to suspend their disbelief long enough to empathize with this fictional character who is in fact a toy, trying to come to terms with the fact that now this creature, this his new enemy, at least in this story, is actually his son.
Hmm.
I think added way more depth than well,
I got
the actual
emotional
movie.
watching it. I remember the emotion very vividly, and I was just like, ooh, ooh.
I'm both
So
happy to hear that, but also sorry to hear
no, like
that.
I want to cry. Like at all times, I want to cry. Well, I don't want
I
to
think
cry
it's
all the
healthy
time.
to do it though. It's
I do
good
think
to
it's healthy to
express
cry.
yourself.
Yeah, and I think if a story can like dredge up an emotion, like I think that helps us feel humanized in a certain way, which is kind of the root of why we love Godzilla so much, right? Like I know everybody loves the smash smash like raw, like we all love that. But we also love like the emotional gravity of things. Like that's what really keeps us invested. And probably I would argue is why Godzilla minus 1 was so wildly popular when you think about it. So, well,
I
I am
agree.
sorry that I forced you to choose one of your favorites.
It's all right. I mean, it's a good way to kind of like journey back and think about just why we do what we do. And it, I mean, that was around the time that, I mean, 2020. I mean, almost enough said.
Hmm.
When this movie was made, for me, it was mainly kind of like if you were to watch like how my previous projects were, which was mainly just rock'em sock'em monster fights,
Right.
and then suddenly this one had an actual like a storyline, an emotional depth to it, and it definitely is entirely inspired by the fact that I became a father, and
Hmm.
this was kind of like me as an artist now inspired by this massive change in my life, and how that now will not only change everything but how it affects, you know, my art. It affects, I mean, even to this day, I mean, a lot of the projects that come out still have a, there's just something's changed, and this is kind of the beginning. This is where things started taking on a more, I'd say, mature sort of
Mm,
theme when compared to, the stuff that came before, which is still fun, like
right, yeah.
still enjoy, and as someone who, I'm sure you can relate to this, Donnie. I mean, you're a fantastic writer. You've written
Oh, thank
so
you.
much incredible stuff over the years. And I'm sure if you were to like go back and read something that you wrote 10 years ago, you might be like, "Oh no, how could I do this? Did I really have to do it that way?"
Oh.
But
Well,
like,
if we look back on Rodin's Roost, I used to write all that old fan fiction, and ooh,
but who hasn't done fan fiction? I mean,
right.
honestly, fan fiction is such a great, wonderful demonstration of just how this what this sort of genre means to you. It really is, I think, healthy. It's a sign that you not only have, you not only appreciate your passion, but now you want to give back. You want to
Mm,
share it with others.
yeah.
And like, I think, even though I might look back at some of these earlier projects and be like, "Oh wow, the visual effects for this. Oh man, I could have done better here, or maybe I should have done this differently." I think it really is important as an artist to just come to terms with the fact that you did a great job. Like,
Yeah, you
enjoy
have to
it
like
because
I tell this to my students too. Like because a lot of students, like if I'm say teaching a creative writing class, they get really insecure about like say poems they wrote in a journal a long time ago or any other writing that they might do. I tell them your juvenilia exists for a reason, right? Like these are snapshots of the person that you were, the capabilities that you had, you know, and I think those deserve to exist and be celebrated in some fashion, right?
I
And
mean,
I
these
think
are
that's
all
the
like
same with what we
stepping
do.
stones to who we
Exactly.
become. It's part of, like, I mean, sure, it's important to, look back and think maybe I could have done this a little differently, or maybe I could have done this better. But what is better compared to what? What alternative is there?
Right.
I mean, it's easy to look back in hindsight about this sort of thing, but then the same could be said about today. 10 years from now, I might come back and be like, Space Godzilla Prodigal Son was okay, but it doesn't compare
Hmm.
to so and so. Or like, it's almost like it's just part of the learning curve about your journey of not only being an artist, of not only being a storyteller, but just you're kind of on a quest yourself. Like, you're similarly to how we watch these stories to see characters grow and become, ideally better people.
Hmm.
We ourselves are doing that at this very moment. And hindsight's great and all to,
Hmm.
when you're kind of slowly beginning to, look back and maybe critique your past work, but that is what helped shape you into the person you are today. And who knows what we're doing today, how that will affect us tomorrow and the years to come.
See, that was very poignantly put. Like a chef's kiss. That was wonderful. That was wonderfully
I'll
articulated, my
close the
friend.
AI generator over here that helped,
Oh
that
no.
just supplemented the script to me.
No, like that really. I mean, I really connect with what you just said, and I think I mean, there are many motivations for why I've chosen to do this show. I've mentioned numerous times that I only thought that it would be like 10 episodes and I'd be done with it. But like, people clearly have a want for this. And what has really made me feel enriched by the whole experience is the fact that each of these episodes, each individual that graciously decides to come on, like each episode that they have gives them this small little snapshot that they can take with them as they continue growing in what they do, as they continue, evolving as a Godzilla fan. That way they can look back and be like, wow, like this is where I was then versus, where I am now, what things are similar, how have I grown, are there things that maybe I don't think the same way regarding, any further, right? So I just like I think the internet is a beautiful thing. It can be a toxic, horrible thing,
Oh yeah.
but I think it can be a beautiful thing because it does allow us to capture these moments where we can see our evolution.
See, that's what I love so much about Growing Up with Godzilla, with what you've started, is that it really invites both your guests but also your viewers, and invites introspection, to be able to look into your own past, your own unique experiences,
Hmm.
while at the same time inviting you to think about others too. How much do we have in common? Like,
Yeah.
who'd have thought? Like, you and I go way back to like Rodin's Ruse, yet here we are, like millions of years later. Like, here we are, like still enjoying what we're doing, but still at the same time inviting others to, share their stories. Like, like one of my favorite things to do online now is to seek other stories, to read about like what is it that fans like, whether I like it or not. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not a big fan of like the Godzilla Earth anime trilogy that came out several years ago. But
Hmm.
one of my favorite things to do is to read about what people do like about it. Like, I have so many friends and collaborators who like have spent threads, like dedicated so much of their time talking about what these movies mean to them.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an important thing to be able to hear. I mean, an important life skill, most certainly, and something you work in public education. I'm sure this is going to resonate, but it's an important life skill to be able to hear something you disagree with and allow it to continue to be said until, hey, now it's your turn to chime in. But are you
Hmm.
able to, in all sincerity, be able to hear something you disagree with and then have a conversation about it to actually go even further?
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many times that uh, I may have heard, like to be more personal about this, I wasn't always a fan of Mothra, but there
Hmm.
are fans like you who expressed why this character means so much to you. And
Yeah.
when you look past like your own preconceived notions, like, I didn't like Mothra because she was too girly or something.
Hmm.
But then you like realize, man, it's got nothing to do with that. Look beyond that. Look and see just what makes Mothra such a powerful character. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, for
there's just
sure.
the original Mothra film, which is like an unsung masterpiece, something that I feel like fans should talk about more, because there's
Absolutely.
so much to that original that I like. Every time I watch it, I feel like I learned something new. But like, one of the best scenes from like Mothra versus Godzilla was when, after the humans have pretty much screwed Mothra and her followers over time after time, like, had to almost on their very knees, like, crawl to Mothra and beg for her help to save
Hmm.
them from Godzilla.
Yeah.
There's this moment of like, oh, you know what? She could easily just send them on their way. Like, you reap what you sow. You could have helped us when we needed you, when you took what didn't belong to you. Yet here you come, asking, pleading for divine intervention. And the most incredible thing is that Mothra, almost without hesitation, agreed to help them. Like, that
Yeah.
to me is like the perfect role model. I don't care if she looks like a moth. I don't care if she, like, whether she's a kaiju or not. Like, that
Yeah.
to me is such a profound sense of like that, even at a young age, can show you right from wrong.
You know, one, I think I 100% agree with you. And I have other kaiju that similarly learning about other people's experiences and their love of that kaiju's kind of helped reshape my impression of them. Like I used to not be a huge Anguirus fan, but like meeting the legions of people who love this poor underdog, like helped completely reshape my impression of Anguirus, and now I love Anguirus so much. But regarding Mothra, like I think it was those qualities that really made me gravitate to her at first. Because I actually, and I've mentioned this on an episode before, I can't remember which one, but I used to hate Mothra when I first became a Godzilla. Hard to believe, right?
It
I hated
is hard to
Mothra
believe.
because I was pissed that two larvae defeated Godzilla in Mothra versus. I was so mad about that. But then as I grew, and I started learning more about myself. Like, I started realizing that, I'm a queer person, like, I like things differently than other people. I really started gravitating toward how people misunderstood Mothra so much because I really resonated with that, right? And then I kind of started resonating with, like, her sacrificing things at her own expense for the comfort of everyone around. Like that really struck me as especially a teenager. That's about around the time I started venturing into those message boards. Like I was learning about myself. I was discovering that like, oh, I actually really love Mothra. And, you know, it was kind of like this brain altering moment where I was like, this beautiful creature is actually pretty cool. Like pretty effing cool
In many ways.
in
Like
many ways.
has been like think of all the forms she had in Rebirth of Mothra. All like doesn't even begin to compare to how awesome this character is and what a
Listen,
profound effect she's had on the Godzilla series.
Tom, I've basically been going door to door preaching about the Mothra trilogy to people, being like, hey, here's a pamphlet. Like, Mothra trilogy is actually really great. No, because I think that's like that, those films like added a, like, they're aimed at children, of course, but they added such a unique layer to Mothra that I don't think that we see in the other films. I think we got more personality, more, motivation, behind the character. But I think once when we look at all of these characters and kind of tying it back to the storytelling component where each Godzilla fan on the show has been able to share their love of these particular characters, it not only helps us realize just how diverse our fandom is, but also how unique everyone's entry points and histories have been with with the actual material.